Chapter 3 of the Enchanted Barn. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Gail Mattern. The Enchanted Barn by Grace Livingston Hill. Chapter 3. "I'm sure I don't know what you will think of my asking," said Shirley excitedly, "but I want very much to know whether there is any possibility that you would rent a beautiful big stone barn you own out on the old Glenside Road near Allister Avenue. You do own it, don't you? I was told you did, or at least that Mr. Walter Graham did. They said it belonged to the estate." "Well, now you've got one on me," said the young man with a most engaging smile. "I'm sure I don't know whether I own it or not. I'm sorry. But if it belongs to grandfather's estate — his name was Walter too, you know — why, I suppose I do own part of it. I'm sorry father isn't here. He, of course, knows all about it. Or the attorney. Of course he would know. But I think he has left the office. However, that doesn't matter. What was it you wanted? To rent it, you say?" "Yes," said Shirley, feeling very small and very much an impostor. "That is, if I could afford it. I suppose perhaps it will be way ahead of my means, but I thought it wouldn't do any harm to ask." Her shy eyes were almost filled with tears, and the young man was deeply distressed. "Not at all, not at all," he hastened to say. "I'm just stupid that I don't know about it. Where did you say it was? Out on the Glenside Road? A barn?" "Come to think of it, I remember one of my uncles lived out that way once, and I know there is a lot of land somewhere out there belonging to the estate. You say there is a barn on it?" "Yes, a beautiful barn," said Shirley anxiously, her eyes dreamy and her cheeks like two glowing roses. "It is stone, and has a wide, grassy road like a great staircase leading up to it, and a tall tree over it. There is a brook just below. It is high up from the road on a little grassy hill." "Oh, yes, yes," he said, nodding eagerly. "I see. It almost seems as if I remember. And you wanted to rent it for the summer, you say? You are in the agricultural business, I suppose?" He looked at her respectfully. He knew the new woman and honored her. He did not seem at all startled that she wanted to rent a barn for the summer. But Shirley did not in the least understand. She looked at him bewildered a moment. "Oh, no, I am only a stenographer myself, but my mother — that is " She paused in confusion. "Oh, I see. Your mother is the farmer, I suppose. Your home is near by, near to the barn you want to rent?" Then she understood. "No, oh no," she said desperately. "We don't want to use the barn for a barn at all. I want to use it for a house." It was out at last, the horrible truth, and she sat trembling to see his look of amazement. "Use it for a house?" he exclaimed. "Why, how could you? To live in, do you mean? Or just to take a tent and camp out there for a few days?" "To live in," said Shirley doggedly, lifting her eyes in one swift, defiant look, and then dropping them to her shabby gloves and thin pocketbook, empty now even of the last precious nickel. If he said anything more she was sure she should cry. If he patronized her the least little bit, or grew haughty, now that he saw how low she was reduced, she would turn and fly from the office and never look him in the face. But he did neither. Instead, he just talked in a natural tone, as if it were the most common thing in the world for a girl to want to live in a barn, and nothing to be surprised over in the least. "Oh, I see," he said pleasantly. "Well, now, that might be arranged, you know. Of course, I don't know much about things, but I could find out. You see, I don't suppose we often have calls to rent the property that way." "No, of course not," said Shirley, gathering up her scattered confidence. "I know it's queer for me to ask, but we have to move. They are going to build an apartment house where we are renting now, and mother is sick. I should like to get her out into the country. Our house is so little and dark. And I thought if she could be all summer where she could see the sky and hear the birds she might get well. I want to get my little sisters and brothers out of the city too. But we couldn't likely pay enough rent. I suppose it was silly of me to ask." "Not at all," said the young man courteously, as though she had been a queen whom he delighted to honor. "I don't see why we shouldn't be able to get together on some kind of a proposition. That is, unless father has other plans that I don't know about. A barn ought not to be worth such a big price. How much would you feel like paying?" He was studying the girl before him with interested eyes, noting the well set head on the pretty shoulders, even in spite of the ill fitting, shabby blue coat; the delicate features, the glint of gold in the soft brown hair, the tilt of the firm little chin, and the wistfulness in the big blue eyes. This was a new kind of girl, and he was disposed to give her what she wanted if he could. And he could. He knew well that anything he willed mightily would not be denied him. The frightened color came into the delicate cheeks again, and the blue eyes fluttered down ashamedly. "We are only paying $15 a month now," she said, "and I couldn't pay any more, for we haven't got it. I couldn't pay as much, for it would cost 60 cents a week apiece for George and me to come into our work from there. I couldn't pay more than 12, and I know that's ridiculous for such a great big beautiful place, but I had to ask." She lifted her eyes swiftly in apology and dropped them again. The young man felt a glow of sympathy for her and a deep desire to help her have her wish. "Why, certainly," he said heartily. "Of course you did. And it's not ridiculous at all for you to make a business proposition of any kind. You say what you can do, and we accept it or not as we like. That's our lookout. Now, of course, I can't answer about this until I've consulted father, and not knowing the place well, I haven't the least idea what it's worth. It may not be worth even $12." He made a mental reservation that it should not be, if he could help it. "Suppose I consult with father and let you know. Could I write or phone you? Or will you be around this way any time to morrow?" Shirley's breath was fairly gone with the realization that he was actually considering her proposition in earnest. He had not laughed at her for wanting to live in a barn, and he had not turned down the price she offered as impossible. He was looking at her in a kindly way, as if he liked her for being frank. "Why, yes," she said, looking up shyly. "I can come in to morrow at my noon hour, if that would not be too soon. I always have a little time to myself then, and it isn't far from the office." "That will be perfectly all right for me," smiled young Graham. "I shall be here till 1:30, and you can ask the boy to show you to my office. I will consult with father the first thing in the morning, and be ready to give you an answer. But I am wondering if you have seen this barn. I suppose you have, or you would not want to rent it. But I should suppose a barn would be an awfully unpleasant place to live, kind of almost impossible. Are you sure you realize what the proposition would be?" "Yes, I think so," said Shirley, looking troubled and earnest. "It is a beautiful big place, and the outlook is wonderful. I was there to day, and found a door open at the back, and went in to look around. The upstairs middle floor is so big we could make several rooms out of it with screens and curtains. It would be lovely. We could live in picnic style. Yes, I'm sure mother would like it. I haven't told her about it yet, because if I couldn't afford it, I didn't want to disappoint her. So I thought I would wait till I found out, but I'm just about certain she would be delighted. And anyhow, we've got to go somewhere." "I see," said this courteous young man, trying not to show his amazement and delight in the girl who so coolly discussed living in a barn with curtains and screens for partitions. He thought of his own luxurious home and his comfortable life, where every need had been supplied even before he realized it, and, wondering again, was refreshed in soul by this glimpse into the brave heart of the girl. "Then I will expect you," he said pleasantly, and opening the door, escorted her to the elevator, touching his hat to her as he left her. Shirley would not have been a normal girl if she had not felt the least flutter in her heart at the attention he showed her and the pleasant tones of his voice. It was for all the world as if she had been a lady dressed in broadcloth and fur. She looked down at her shabby little serge suit that had done duty all winter with an old gray sweater under it, half in shame and half in pride in the man who had not let it hinder him from giving her honor. He was a man. He must be. She had bared her poverty-stricken life to his gaze, and he had not taken advantage of it. He had averted his eyes and acted as if it were just like other lives and others' necessities, and he had made her feel that she was just as good as anyone with whom he had to deal. Well, it was probably only a manner, a kind of refined, courteous habit he had, but it was lovely, and she was going to enjoy the bit of it that had fallen at her feet. On the whole, Shirley walked the 10 blocks to her narrow little home feeling that she had had a good day. She was weary, but it was a healthy